here with one of the pioneers of gaming programming, Mr. John Carmack himself. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This must be such an exciting weekend for you.
Well, it's like somebody just mentioned to me that this was the 11th Quakecon, and that was a shock to me. It just seems like only yesterday that it was this tiny little thing in a Best Western hotel. So when I come down here and look around at all of this stuff, it's really cool. We've taken over the management of it in recent years as it's gotten so huge and needs sponsors and all of this stuff. But fundamentally, it wasn't something that we set out to do. It happened by itself. It's been a topic for my keynotes here for the last several years when I talk about the difference between development time and creativity. And there's really an important issue there for the industry where if you set out just to do these AAA blockbuster titles, you're going to spend so much money. And whenever you spend so much money, there's an inherent conservatism that you have to abide by, because you can't go try something wild and crazy if you've got $50 million getting sunk into the development of a project on there. So there's a lot to be said for platforms that allow people to do projects for less money so that they can try more creative things. Sony and Microsoft are still targeting for their primary customers on there, the blockbuster on that, where you want to do something that's the AAA title, that's the best at everything, and it showcases never-before-seen stuff. But it's getting really, really expensive to develop those types of things. And Nintendo is taking the position that it's not necessarily the best thing as a game player to get the very latest graphics, the very latest physics and technology and all this. It might be better to try out new gameplay methods, and I agree with that. So it's good to have a spectrum of choices as a developer that you can work from. I will be surprised if Nintendo winds up having larger total gross console sales numbers than Microsoft and Sony, but I think that they've picked probably an intelligent direction to go, considering that they don't have the same resources to throw at it that Microsoft and Sony do. Well, I've worked on consoles for a long time. I mean, in the really early days, we did Super Nintendo work and Jaguar and 32X and a lot of this. We weren't really deeply involved in the last generation of console games. We worked mostly through outside companies. But I've always been interested in consoles because the trade-offs are a lot different than the PC, because it's not so general purpose. You don't have to worry about compatibility with a million different things. You can really generally make something for a given amount of hardware about 4 times better if you know exactly what you're working on. So it's always been interesting on there, but now for the first time we have consoles that are really just as good as the PCs that we can target directly rather than building on the PC and sort of cutting it down and making it work on the consoles. So we have sort of reached a new milestone point for that, and it is exciting. I'm enjoying the work that I'm doing a lot on there. It's a little bit more trouble to try and keep everything in sync all the, at the same time, but we are making our decisions mostly around the consoles now, because the PCs they'll keep up, they'll at least keep parity, and eventually the PCs do get faster. I mean, people think that the consoles are 10 times more powerful, but really a high-end PC is already more powerful than the brand new consoles. More so than any previous console generation, the next generation consoles have all the power of a really high-end PC, both in terms of memory, processing, and graphics. They're not equivalent to if you spend a couple $1,000s on a PC, it's going to be more powerful than your $500 console, but they're incredible values for the money, and they're really good development targets now, where it used to be you would make pretty serious compromises when you were developing for a console in terms of the development tools that you could use, the resources you'd have available. But now, honestly, they're probably better than PCs to target for, because they've always had the benefits of being a nice closed platform, but now the tools are really great for them, the hardware's really nice, and I'm having a lot of fun developing for the platforms. Relative-wise, you can say that the PS3 has more peak theoretical power, but it's more difficult to develop for. And I could go on for hours on the exact reasons why that's so, but to sum it up, that's the answer. The PS3 is a little more powerful, but harder to develop for. We have not started directly targeting Windows Vista on anything. We don't expect any real problems. Early on, there were a lot of potential issues with OpenGL compatibility, but Microsoft does a very good job with compatibility on there, and we don't expect any huge problems targeting that. We don't think that there are any particularly novel features in the operating system that will be that important to us. We will not be targeting DX10 for this generation of titles. There's just not going to be a large enough installed base. That'll have to wait for our next generation of titles after this before we really start taking advantage of the extremely new touted features, because honestly they don't exist in hardware yet. We have to wait for the hardware to catch up with the specifications. It's interesting where 10 years ago I was an early adopter. I was always grabbing the latest beta releases of operating systems. Every new point release I would update, but maybe it's just as I'm getting older, but I just don't have that desire to switch to the latest and greatest operating system and reinstall all my applications and worry about compatibility problems. I think we may be sort of over a knee of a curve in terms of benefits for upgrading on there. It'll happen automatically as people buy new computers in the upgrade cycle, but I wouldn't be surprised if adoption of people reinstalling operating systems is a little bit sluggish going forwards. It's possible that our next generation title could be Vista specific. Depends on how long it takes us to actually finish this title and what the market is looking like on there. But we don't have a really strong internal push for it. Life's always better for a developer if you're not supporting multiple platforms, but there's not a strong enough pull from the Vista platform to make us want to kick off customers that would otherwise not be playing it. Well, last year I released the source code for Quake 3, and that's been a sort of my tradition now for quite a few years, where as soon as we've completed and sort of matured the next generation title, I'll go and I'll release the source code for the previous title. And most of that does go back to just these memories that I have of being 14 years old, playing games on my computer, and wishing I had the ability to go in and look at how the game was written, maybe change it a little bit. And now that I'm in the position of creating those games, that there probably is that 14 or 28 or however year old person that's thinking those exact same things. Being able to actually make that come true, to be able to put it out there and let them see exactly how it's put together and change anything that they want on that, that's something that I have been very proud to be able to do all these years. Our internal development project our mainline project, is still essentially a secret. We haven't announced what it is. All we've said is that it is new technology, but it's in a direction that's different than traditional id Software games. It's not a run-and-gun corridor shooter, at least exclusively. It has new gameplay elements, but we are sticking to our guns on this, and we're going to make it through a lot of the game development before we wind up even pitching it to the publishers and showing it to people on here. Because for years, we've had this classic problem where whenever we do new graphics technology, there's this huge urge to go exploit it and do something really cool that nobody's ever seen before and show it off. And that has some benefits. It gets a lot of people excited about it, but it's really not a good thing for helping us get the whole game done, because then we will have some parts of the game that look absolutely incredible, and it makes you want to make everything look like that when you're still trying to work out the gameplay. So we're trying to position ourselves back from that, where we want to be able to do the whole game without being under this pressure of looking better than anything else out on the market. I mean, we will at the end, but we're just not doing that yet. And we've tried to do this on the last 3 projects, and we always fail, and we've stuck to it longer this time than we have ever before. So I have high hopes that this is going to help us get the game done without multi-year delays.